Welcome back. You're listening to Home Wizards. I'm Cindy Dole.
Hey, I'm Eric Stromer.
And we'd love to improve your home and improve your life, and that means not only what's happening on the inside, but the outside, right? How's your garden doing right now?
My garden is doing great, and I got to tell you, I feel a little bit like Elvis is with us right now. He's the king of water conservation information. Our own Lance Walheim is sitting right next to me, and I'm kind of going nuts.
Oh, geez. Well, calm down, because he's a great guy. Hi, Lance.
Hey,
Lance
Cindy.
Walheim is
Good morning.
with us. We love having him with us because he has so many great tidbits. He's written. How many books have you written?
Oh, I lost track. You're making me really feel old, but over 30.
Yeah, well, you wrote them all in a week.
That's right.
See, it was very fast.
Easy to do.
That's right.
And we're always thinking about things we can do to save water, right? Even though right now, depending on what the weather is like where you live, you might feel like there's plenty of water, but maybe there isn't. And the truth is that water is a precious and limited resource. And when we think of growing up with gardens, you might think of that sprinkler always going. And that's a bad thing to be thinking of.
Yeah,
isn't it?
or your neighbor's sprinkler head that's just
On the
shooting
sidewalk.
water onto the sidewalk, and it's not even hitting anything growing.
So if we want to first just start about thinking of gardening with less water, I mean, you were saying before we went on air that it really has technology's come a long way to help us be more successful with less water.
It really has. You know, being a California resident, we see droughts on a regular basis, as most of the country will, eventually.
Yeah.
And, what I've seen since the droughts in the 70s, and we had some in the late 80s also, the technology has improved in terms of sprinklers and smart controllers and the information that's available on the websites, too, from the local water departments. I mean, there's water calculators. There's a lot of great tools that people can use in their backyards or their front yards to conserve water, and it's becoming very important. I mean, water is such a valuable resource, and we've got more and more people all the time. So, you need to design your garden to use the least amount of water as you possibly can.
And I guess this was something that was going on way back in early Greek times, right?
Right.
With the word xeriscape.
Xeriscape.
But it means landscaping.
There you go.
With less water.
That's right. And it has some basic principles which always make good sense. First of all, water conservation begins with good design. Think about where you're going to put plants. Group plants that have the same water requirements. Group plants that have the same requirements, period. Sun, shade, whatever.
It's a buddy system.
It really is. And then when you do that, you get areas that can be watered at the same rate. Not some plants aren't getting overwatered. Other plants aren't getting underwatered. Out here in the West, we use the most water-using plants, or the heavy water users, near the house because they're going to provide cooling. You almost create an oasis around the house, and then you use the more water-conserving plants the farther you get away from the house, out into the other areas of the landscape.
Because you're not going to get to those as much.
Right. And you really want to use the ones that are going to look the best close to the house. So it always starts with good design. And again, the tools that you have online to design a water-conserving landscape. In a lot of areas, in the West, there are even incentives. They'll pay you to take your lawn out and replace it with water-conserving plants in your front yard in many areas. So there's a lot of options.
And what about improving the soil? Because Eric and I talk about that a lot in terms of just making it healthy soil. But it seems that if our soil is better, if it's not too clay-ish, meaning it's not going to, deal with water as well, or if it's just too, sandy, if we accommodate that, won't that help us with our water needs?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Adding a lot of organic matter is really important. It opens up clay soils and it improves the water retention of sandy soils. But any landscape project should start with a soil test. So get your soil test, not only see how much organic matter you need, but what else you might need.
And what do you like? How do we do our soil test?
Well, there's a number of different ways. In a lot of states, the cooperative extension will do it for you. There'll be a fee, and they'll give you recommendations about what to add in terms of whether the soil pH should be adjusted. In other states, you can look under the yellow pages for soil labs, and you'll find private facilities that will test your soil for you.
They can maybe take a baggie of it, a little Ziploc, and send it somewhere?
Well, they'll give you instructions. When you find the place you're going to do it, they'll give you instructions. And you take samples from all over the yard, and you do it just like I was talking about before in zones. You want to know what the soil conditions are in a real dry area as opposed to a shady area. They may be different. So you do samples all around.
Hey, Lance, is it a recommendation to kind of grow things that are indigenous to your area. Use that as the anchor of your landscaping rather than trying to import stuff from other lands that aren't supposed to grow there.
That's exactly right, and that's the next important step is to choose appropriate plants. A great place to go is to native plants are an ideal solution. These are plants that for millions of years that have been adapted to the climate, whether it's the dry summers of California or the wet summers of the southeast.
But isn't it true though that places like, for instance, retirement areas, Arizona, a lot of people that might have moved to Arizona from New York.
Let's bring our lawn.
Let's bring our New York plants
Well,
because isn't that true?
It's absolutely true. If you go around Los Angeles area and you see a lot of the birch trees that are planted in people's yards, this is a tree that's native to the East Coast that needs a lot of water.
See,
Sure.
So people bring what they can. And
so what really is native? We have to kind of figure out.
I was just in Phoenix a couple of days ago, and the indigenous plant essentially is gravel in Phoenix. I mean, it's like there's nothing there except desert
and
type
tumbleweed
plants, right?
No, there's some.
Right.
But then I see people with huge lawns and golf courses spraying tons and tons of water, make it alive. Obviously, it just seems crazy to me.
Yeah, we're talking about regional native plants. So there are obviously some great native plants in the Phoenix area and the Houston area, the cactus and the succulents and things like that. But it gets so hot down there that it's almost like a lot of plant. There's really nothing in certain situations that's going to do well, and so appropriately used gravel and things like that and worked in with plants can be quite attractive.
Right.
Are there some good websites that you like or resources to help us identify what is truly a native plant in our neighborhood?
Well, the local native plant societies, every state, and also you have
there's a native plant society?
There's a United States Native Plant Society, and there's regional native plant societies. They all have plant
How do you
lists.
join? I want to join.
Just go to their website and find out what the, and they have great plant sales. They're a great source of information. So that's really one of the number one places to go. The other thing, of course, is you can go to your cooperative extension. In Arizona, they have a great cooperative extension service there and, lists and descriptions of native plants. And then again, even back to your local water department, they will have recommended plants, and oftentimes they will be native plants. I mean, you certainly don't have to go completely native if you don't want. For instance, in California, a lot of drought-tolerant plants from South Africa and Australia are also very important.
Sure.
So
but to your point, you can contain things that maybe aren't, where all of them are going to get grouped enough so that the water can be easier. The delivery system's much more efficient.
There you go.
You're maximizing your use of water, right?
Right.
And you being a citrus guy, and an edible guy, and we all love to grow our edibles, isn't it true that there are a number of edibles that don't require as much water as others?
Well, that's true. But when you're starting to work with vegetables and things, if you don't give your vegetables enough water, you're going to have problems. I mean, you talk about cucumbers getting bitter, lettuce getting bitter and bolting. So you have to be very careful. But again, there are some native or some plants that have been used, some types of beans and it also has to do with when you plant them. Plant them with the seasons. If you're planting the cool season vegetables in the cool parts of the year. But if there's any place that deserves your attention when it comes to water, it's where you're growing your own food. So, but also we have a lot of tools that we can use there in terms of drip irrigation and things like that.
Yeah, and talk about drip irrigation, because that's come a long way, and Eric did that to his own front area.
I did the underground emitters. Have you seen those? I think they're kind of great.
I have those in my garden too, and they're perfect for vegetable gardens.
Yeah,
you basically
So
line
basically,
them out
it's getting to the root, right?
It really is. It's applying water exactly where it needs to be, exactly to the roots of the plant. So you don't, and at a slow rate, so you don't have any runoff, which is a big waste of water. And also, you're not wetting a lot of soil that doesn't need to be wetted, so you don't get a lot of weeds, which compete with the plants. So it's a very effective way. And there's kits out there that you can use to do them. But if you really do some investigation, it's really a fun project. It's almost like a Lego project. You're snapping things together, and there's all different things. And it takes a little bit of time to really learn how to use the drip system, because these apply water at a real slow rate. So you got to make sure you know how long to water so that you're wetting that entire root zone. It takes longer.
I also had a little issue where I was digging around and I actually inadvertently hit one of the lines and had to get back in there and find it again. And reattach it with those little Lego clip-on things. But other than that, I think it's amazing.
Yeah, and the underground irrigation system that you're talking about, I have also in my vegetable garden in parts of my yard. And you really have to know how to use that too, because you don't want to let it go completely dry. You want to run it, and then the water kind of wicks through the soil. So you have to use it properly.
And so we look for or ask for an underwater drip system.
An underground irrigation.
Underground.
And you can find them in any of the any
In
of
the
the
big box stores, yeah.
And they come in rolls, and then you have to put filters and you have to put pressure regulators. You got to know what you're
And a
doing.
timer, maybe? Does it come with it?
Timer is perfect. I
Yeah.
mean, if you go away, but also with these smart timers,
Right, to
that,
tell you what the weather is,
well,
right?
they're
and
hooked
what
to
you
a
need.
weather station.
To your point, though, Lance, you definitely do have to do a little bit of homework. It's not just like you throw it in the ground. Because the pressure regulator is a huge thing. Otherwise, you're blowing those hoses out. So you have to.
An irrigation is a tool, and it's only as good as an irrigation system. It's only good as the people who use it. So, and that's really a great opportunity to save water for most people is to revamp their irrigation.
And Lance, I'm sorry. Is this drought really monumentally bad this time?
Yeah, I think it sure is. I mean, we've had actually here 3 years of drought.
Hold that thought. We're going to get more into saving water in your garden, more ideas to make sure that the plants that you're growing are not as thirsty. Eric Stromer, Cindy Dole. You're listening to Home Wizards.
Have you ever seen rain coming down the state?
That sounds like a stream.
That's a little composition I created with a flute and a recorder.
Oh,
No, I'm kidding.
that's lovely. That's Eric Stromer, and I'm Cindy Dole. And you're listening to Home Wizards. Thanks for sharing your day with us, because we love to make you feel good about where you live. And we like to focus not only on the inside, but, the outside, the yard, your garden. And with us is Lance Walheim, who is really just so smart about all things about gardening. And we're trying to figure out ways to save water. So thanks for hanging with us, Lance. And you were talking about some of the basic steps, like amending the soil,
Correct.
Using an underground drip system,
Right.
watching location, and not only testing samples of the soil from close to your house to medium to far away, because those will be different water requirements. But what about mulch? How does that?
Mulch is so important.
Yeah.
I mean, my rule is not just mulch, but mulch, and mulch. Mulch cools the soil. It reduces evaporation from the soil, and it reduces weeds, again, which compete for the plants for water. It makes your garden look great, but you don't want to do it just once in spring. You
Just don't use those wood chips that are kind of
the ones that are bright
spray
red.
painted.
Yeah,
I
there
hate
you go.
those.
Those
I don't
are
like
really
those.
bad
Yeah.
looking.
Look, the circus is in town.
I don't understand that, to be honest with you. But 2 to 3 inches of mulch, keep it away from the base of the trunk of the tree or whatever you got it, is an ideal way to conserve water, and it breaks down pretty quickly. So you need to look at it carefully, and if you need to, replenish it over the summer.
And it's inexpensive.
And do you
No, it
just
really
do you
isn't.
just layer it, or do you rake the old stuff up? I mean, how
No,
do-
I just go ahead and put
just
it
leave
on
it
top.
right. Okay.
It just
Yeah, and so-
decomposes on its own. Yeah.
Right. Now, if you've also got irrigation, if you're using something like landscape fabric, or you're
Right.
putting irrigation in and you're not putting it underground, which a lot of it just goes on the top, you put the mulch right on top of that. Like you say, a lot of it's very inexpensive. A lot of communities do a lot of recycling on their own, and so you can get bulk, compost to use. There's, of course, wood bark, wood chips. So there's a lot of different options, and it isn't that expensive.
Yeah, I get a whole pickup truck for like $25 or something like that.
Yeah.
So.
So as we are thinking about ways to save water, what about native grasses instead of a lawn?
Well, the first place you've got to, that's a part of good design. And
Yeah.
so if you want to conserve water outside, the first question you got to ask yourself is, how much lawn do I really need? The days, if the only time you use your lawn is when you walk across it to mow it, you've got too much grass. And so there are all sorts of alternatives. I mean, there's no doubt that a lawn is the best place.
It's the
surface there
American
is.
image, yeah.
And if you've got kids and you want to have a section of lawn, that's great. But think about how
Guilty.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what
yeah.
I have.
usually 600 square feet of lawn is plenty, and maybe you don't need it in the front yard at all. You just need a spot in the backyard. So and there are options, as you said, of alternatives to lawns. Things
Hardscapes?
Yeah, hardscapes.
Yeah, I
but
just
also,
can't. The American dream dies when I'm throwing the pass to my son, who catches and falls in the gravel pit.
Yeah.
Just doesn't feel
yeah.
the same.
I know. I know.
I saw a little statistic.
Not as romantic.
No.
A little statistic the other day. If you take a shower, you may use something like 700 gallons to take a shower. So you can conserve, say, 20% there. You may save 20 or 30 gallons.
Right.
But when you water your lawn, you may be using as much as 700 gallons for every irrigation. So if you cut back 20% there, or cut your lawn surface back 20%, you're going to save a lot of water.
Yeah, you know what I did? I have a really large front yard, so what I did is I took a third of it and created a garden bed and used the underground irrigation. It really did help with the water bill.
And you cut back on showers as a
And well,
to
the kids,
kinda
I say, you guys can't. If you want to play football, no showers ever again.
It's all about the lawn.
Here's
that we
a
have.
sponge bath.
I wasn't going
Take
to
care
say
of yourself.
anything,
Yeah.
I'm sitting next to him.
But there are some native grasses, like we were talking about native plants. In other words, to your region that really, they were there before you were, right?
Right.
But in terms of native grasses, we can find that region by region.
Oh, sure you
Yeah.
can. And, one of the ones that's really popular right now is buffalo grass.
I love
which
buffalo
is
grass.
native to the high plains areas and also being used in west and many areas.
Buffalo meat is not as good, but the buffalo grass.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
like the buffalo
Yeah,
meat?
I don't.
And
yeah.
It doesn't need to be mowed as much. It takes a lot less water. And there are other options too. The whole idea of almost creating a meadow lawn.
Yes.
You can get seed mixes now these days that can contain things like yarrow with maybe some grasses that don't give you a real lawn look. They can be walked on, but it's more of a meadow look. So
With the wind kind of flowing
yeah.
and
I mean, you want that. I mean, there's a certain landscape appeal to an open area that a lawn gives you. So if you can replace that with something that's more water water thrifty, and get a meadow look to it, you still get that openness and get something that's very beautiful.
So if we were to get one of those meadow seed packets or a few of them, we would just, if we had a hillside, let's say, we could just throw it on the hillside and have this instant water-saving, low-maintenance garden.
Well, you would if you were getting some rain. Timing is important, and
Yeah.
also where you are. A lot of these mixes are sold regionally, and we've also got some people are just companies that are selling some types of even sod now that is more water conserving, native types of sod. So
And what about permeable paving even?
yeah,
Yeah.
that's perfect.
Yeah.
The water still gets into the ground. That's an ideal thing when it comes to sustainability is keeping the soil open and exposed. That's a great idea.
So talk to me again about this drought. I mean, seriously, it's worse than it's been in a while.
Well, we're
Yeah.
talking about a drought that's affecting mainly California
That's
right
right.
now.
right.
but
Yeah,
it's-
and even
it's-
within California, it's hit and miss. It depends
Sure.
on where the communities get their water from. But yeah, I mean, they're saying that it's the worst drought in 100 years, and we don't get a lot of water to begin with. I mean, technically we're a desert, but when we get lose half our water, or 2/3 or 3/4 of our water, and we don't get the snowfall in the mountains, it's serious business.
So then to that, when you're ineffectively watering, then weeds show up and compete with the plants, and then you got an issue where you're starting to have to deal with pests,
Right.
obviously, right?
Exactly right. Plants that are drought stressed are more susceptible to insects and diseases. So you've got to be aware of that. You've got to protect your valuable trees or your favorite plants like your roses. And, that's really where I recommend the Bayer Advance, for instance, all-in-one rose and flower care.
Right.
It's a systemic. You don't have to spray it. You mix it with water, pour it on the base of the plant, and it's absorbed into the plant and works from the inside out. And because you don't have to spray, and because it lasts longer than traditional spray types, you're conserving water. So, that's a really good option.
That's
and
good to
also, there are products that you can find out about at BayerAdvance.com that'll also protect your trees because, when these trees dry out, you're going to have problems. They're going to be susceptible to things like borers and scales. So, the Bayer Advanced Tree and Shrub Protected Feed is another good
and we
option.
we do love our trees because the trees will not only enhance our property value and give us shade and also cool our home and help us save energy that way. But some
Absolutely.
trees do require a lot of water. So what would you say are maybe the top 5 trees that you would recommend if we are thinking about conserving on water?
Well, again, that's going to be a regional
thing.
Yeah. I mean, in California, we have trees like, certainly people should be thinking about our native oaks. If you have a lot of room, Chinese pistache is another tree, but that it, doesn't take a lot of water. There are a lot of great trees across the country that, are really drought resistant, but they're not necessarily trees that are not going to need water at all during the summer. These occasionally even our native oaks can sometimes get into water problems. So and that's really the most valuable part of your landscape. So you want to keep a close eye on those. And if you do have to water them, you want to make sure you apply the water right. In other words, you want to wet the root zone. You're putting a soaker hose around
We love
a
our
tree
soaker hose.
and letting it run for a while so that you get
Yeah.
that water down 2 to 3 feet. Maybe only once or twice during the summer may save a tree that is, worth a lot a to your landscape.
Now, Eric, I'm not sure if you have a soaker hose yet. Do you know what he's talking about?
I actually have the ring underground
Oh, good.
around the tree base,
Which is
in a
great.
couple of my trees.
Yeah. So, and the soaker hose is basically a black often. It's a
Right.
black hose
With
that
a bunch
has
of holes in it,
that
right?
has teeny tiny little like toothpick size holes,
Right.
right? That sends out little drips, and then it's locked at the end,
Right.
so the water just goes through the holes.
Sure.
And how far should we put it from the root of the center of the tree, the trunk of the tree?
Well, you
out?
should, it depends on the size of the tree. You
Yeah.
want to wet the entire, drip zone, which
Right.
is from the outside of the canopy in. So you don't want to
So-
necessarily get the trunk wet. So
Right.
keep it a little ways from the trunk and
Yeah.
then kind of loop it out.
Like a couple
as you
times
go.
maybe, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
Do
you
a
definitely
big-
want to come out to where the canopy stops at the edge
Right,
of that area.
the drip line, and even
so
a little, maybe
radius
a
around the base of the
Right.
tree.
And then usually like about an hour or
well,
two, maybe?
well, it may be even longer than that.
Yeah.
Because these
It'll go
things apply
deep.
water
Yeah.
really slow, and that's what
Yeah.
you're not getting a lot of runoff. So, what you can do is you can go out there with a stiff wire or even a dowel or something and probe the soil,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll go in easily through wet soil. But when it hits dry soil, it'll
Mm-hmm.
stop. So that's a good way to tell how far down the water's going.
Oh,
So-
And these
good to
drip
know.
hoses, they don't. It seems the soakers that they don't use as much water, or are they?
They just apply it slowly, and
Very
that's the key
slowly,
thing.
yeah.
You don't want to put a lot of pressure on those. A
Uh-huh.
lot of them are made out of recycled tires and things too.
Right.
So
That's why they're
they-
black, I
Yeah,
guess.
they put the water on. That's the key thing when you're trying to get this water down deep. You don't want to apply it too fast so that it runs off and you get runoff. You see it all when you're walking around
Mm-hmm.
the streets and the sidewalks are wet and there's water running down the gutter. So you want to apply it slow so it sinks in, and it can take a while. To get down to a depth of 2 to 3 feet, you're going to have to let it run for a while. But you got to check it. A lot of times, just getting some timers and putting them on the end of your hose bib is a great way to
Right.
conserve water. So you turn it off. Just turn your water off.
Now, you also are a rose guy. You've written all kinds of, you've written Roses for Dummies,
Right.
among other great books. And we're talking with Lance Walheim, by the way, if you're just joining us. And so in terms of roses, I found that they aren't always that thirsty. It seems that sometimes when I forget to water them, they still give me great blooms.
Yeah, roses are tougher than you think. They can, especially some of the species roses, they can really take some dry conditions. But if you really want to keep blooming, they should be watered at least once a week. About an inch of water. And then again, the key thing is making sure that you're mulching them. And in dry situations, you may want to back off a little bit on the fertilizer so you're not pushing a lot of growth. And if things get really bad and you're really trying to save your favorite plant, you might want to just hold off on the pruning on the roses. So don't take the hips off. That sometimes will slow the growth.
Once and for all, give me the final on where do I trim the rose? Where do I do it? Is it above the 5 leaves? Is
Where
that
do you
the
trim
deal?
it? Is it? Oh,
Yeah,
you know, when
you're
you-
talking about the
the
there's a lot of old strange rose pruning rules, and that is
Yeah.
one of them. That you should prune a rose back to where you see the first 5
5 leaf
leaflet
cluster.
leaf. Yeah,
Okay.
but the farther you go back, the stronger stem that you're going to get as a result. So I like to
Oh.
even go farther than that. You don't want to get a wimpy stem.
Lance
No.
Walheim, thanks for giving us all this
That's
great
it?
advice.
That's all I get with Lance?
Eric
Oh,
Stromer,
man.
Cindy Dole, we'll put it all on the website at yourhomewizards.com. And the fun continues. Keep it here. You're listening to
All right.
Home Wizards.
I'm sad, a little bit.